Before I start with a couple of additional questions about the impact of these tariffs, I want to associate myself with Senator Whitehouse's comments just now about the impact on our small businesses, particularly those who are critical parts of supply chains for some of our larger corporations in the country. As you know, Canada is our biggest trading partner too, and we are already seeing the impact of these tariffs with our small businesses, especially in our tourism industry, which is being decimated because Canadians are not coming down to New Hampshire the way they usually do. Let me ask you about a couple of other things. President Trump's tariffs have made almost everything that families buy more expensive. The president imposed a 10% national sales tax on all imports into our country and an even higher sales tax on imports from more than 50 countries, including our allies like Canada. This is the largest tax increase in over half a century, and it's going to cost the average American family $3,800 a year. Their morning cup of coffee will cost more, so will new shoes for their kids, and so will fresh fruit. So my question to you, Ambassador, is how much revenue from the president's national sales tax will be used to give tax breaks to billionaires?
So, Senator, as you know, any kind of tariff revenue that comes in to the United States government, it goes to the Treasury, and Congress will decide what happens to that money. Obviously, the president wants to have a very competitive tax policy that's good for everybody. That was part of why he had such a successful economy in the first term, is he married trade action with good tax policy to have $7,000 an increase in real wages over that time.
Well, let's be really clear. The president, besides the contradictions in the way he talks about the purpose of his tariffs, the president's made very clear that he sees tariffs as a way of increasing revenue. At the same time, he's working with the majority in Congress to give additional tax breaks to the wealthiest people in the country at the expense of working people who are going to be paying more for everyday goods they absolutely have to pay, goods they were hoping were going to cost less, given the president's campaign promises. But of course, he isn't keeping to those campaign promises as prices continue to go up. Now, the president's national sales tax is increasing prices for families. It's also causing huge losses in Americans' retirement savings. Ambassador Greer, would the administration reverse course if the president's tariffs led to 10% inflation?
Senator, the president is fixed in his purpose. This trade deficit and the offshoring and loss of manufacturing jobs is something that's persisted for too long, and it's dangerous.
I understand your justification for the policy, even though there are some very contradictory justifications coming out of the administration. But my question is, what's the inflation rate where you guys would reverse course? 10% inflation that I just asked you about, that is higher inflation than we saw at the peak of the COVID economic crisis. But you aren't going to say here today that you would reverse course even if you created inflation as high as we had at the peak of the COVID economic crisis.
I think the most serious inflation we saw was during the Biden administration. When we did tariffs in the first term, inflation went down. I just don't. It's not going to be a one-to-one. Inflation about how much money you're putting into the supply.
Well, let's just be really clear that the Trump administration is here today to say that even if inflation hits Americans' pocketbooks at 10% because of these tariffs, then the Trump administration is still going to go charging ahead. So, Ambassador, would the administration reverse course if the president's tariffs caused a 50% stock market crash, which would hurt Americans' retirement savings even more than they've been hurt in the last 10 days or so?
Senator, the fundamentals of the economy are so strong. We had 228,000 jobs last month. We have 9,000 additional manufacturing jobs from the month before.
Your answer is even if the stock market crashes 50%, which is how much the stock market crashed in the Great Recession, you're not going to say here today that you would reverse course even if you crashed the stock market and harmed retirement savings as drastically as happened during the Great Recession in 2007.
Senator, your hypotheticals are not consistent with the history we have seen with the use of tariffs.
My hypotheticals are based on the fact that a lot of Americans are looking at their 401ks today and wondering how much of a lifestyle change they are going to have, or whether they're going to be able to retire when they plan to, because of the recklessness and haphazard nature of the Trump administration's imposition of tariffs. Nothing was thought out about this. This has been a haphazard, incompetent effort, and it's showing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.